There are more than 3 million shipwrecks resting across the ocean floor right now. 3 million. Each one a machine built by human hands, launched with human purpose, lost to forces no engineer ever fully anticipated. Together, they represent millions of tons of steel, copper, aluminum, wood, fuel residue, and industrial material sitting inside the largest and least understood environment on Earth. Most people imagine these wrecks as frozen moments. Capsules of history suspended in cold darkness, perfectly preserved beneath the pressure of the deep. That image is wrong. The deep ocean does not preserve ships. It processes them with a patience and thoroughness that no industrial recycling system on the surface has ever matched. Far below sunlight, beyond storms and tidal movement, beyond the reach of oxygen-rich currents, there exists a recycling system so vast and so ancient, it operates on a genuinely planetary scale. Every single day, organic material descends from the surface into the abyss. Dead plankton, microscopic shells, biological debris of every kind. A continuous, invisible rain of matter falling through miles of darkness to feed ecosystems that depend entirely on what gravity delivers. Shipwrecks enter this same system, and once they arrive, something unexpected begins to unfold. The deeper they sink, the more completely they are absorbed. The first life to reach a shipwreck is completely invisible to the human eye. Within days of a vessel coming to rest on the seafloor, microbial biofilms begin forming across every exposed surface. These bacteria operate under pressures exceeding hundreds of atmospheres, in temperatures hovering near freezing, in conditions that would kill virtually every organism visible to the naked eye. Some derive their energy from hydrocarbons locked inside corroding paint and fuel residue. Others exploit sulfur chemistry, bubbling from sediment below. And some extract electrons directly from iron itself, using structural steel the way other organisms use sunlight. One such organism was identified at the Titanic wreck site, surviving by metabolizing the ship's own hull. This discovery fundamentally changed how scientists understand the pace of deep ocean decay. Ships are not simply rusting in the darkness. They are being actively consumed by living systems that evolved long before human beings learned to smelt metal. And in some conditions, these microbial communities can weaken steel faster in deep water than in shallow environments where fluctuating oxygen levels actually interrupt the process. Depth does not always mean preservation. Sometimes it means efficiency. As microbial corrosion advances across a wreck's surface, strange and almost alien structures begin to emerge. Scientists call them rusticles. At first glance, they look like orange mineral icicles hanging from corroded hull plating. In reality, they are living architecture, biological colonies containing billions of cooperative microorganisms, forming layered metabolic systems of extraordinary complexity. Some members produce acids that dissolve iron, others stabilize the biofilm structure, others recycle corrosion byproducts back into usable energy. Together they function as something resembling a slow, decentralized biological machine, converting industrial material into ecological structure, one microscopic layer at a time. Scientists studying corrosion ecology now classify rusticles as a primary example of biologically driven material transformation, a process where life does not simply colonize a surface, but actively restructures it into something new. This means something genuinely remarkable is happening on every aging deep ocean wreck. A machine built by human civilization is being dismantled and rebuilt as a biological habitat. And at some critical point in this process, the transformation becomes irreversible. The ship cannot go back to being a ship. It has already become something else. As microbial colonization expands outward and structural surfaces begin to break down, larger organisms start arriving and staking territory. Amphipods pick through organic residues, accumulating in crevices. Deep sea crabs occupy protected openings in the hull. Octopuses establish dens inside sheltered compartments, using corroded doorways as the entrance to permanent homes. Predatory fish begin patrolling the wreck's perimeter, because prey concentrates there in densities impossible to find on the flat abyssal plain stretching in every direction. Some studies suggest that shipwrecks can increase local biomass by several times compared to the surrounding seafloor. In an environment that is otherwise almost completely flat and nutrient-poor, vertical structure changes everything about how energy moves, where shelter exists, and how predation unfolds. For a time, a wreck becomes something like a deep ocean apartment complex, dense with life at every level. But unlike any building humans have ever constructed, this structure is actively dissolving while it is being inhabited. Its residents are thriving inside something that is slowly ceasing to exist. Marine ecologists still debate the core question this creates. Do shipwrecks genuinely build deep ocean ecosystems? Or do they only delay the emptiness that follows their eventual collapse? Even without any biological activity, seawater alone is chemically relentless in ways most people never appreciate. Saltwater creates the conditions for electrochemical reactions between dissimilar metals anywhere they contact each other. Chloride ions penetrate protective coatings that were designed to last decades on the surface, but were never engineered for permanent submersion under thousands of feet of pressure. Hydrogen sulfide produced by bacterial respiration accelerates localized corrosion in ways that external seawater chemistry alone could never achieve. Galvanic reactions at the microscopic level slowly and invisibly dismantle structural integrity from the inside outward. Temperature slows the speed of these reactions compared to warmer, shallow water environments. But the extraordinary stability of the deep ocean, no seasonal changes, no storms, no significant temperature variation, means these reactions continue uninterrupted for decades without pause. This creates a paradox that surprises most people when they first encounter it. Decay in the deep ocean happens slowly, but it never stops, not for a single day. Given sufficient time, even the most precisely engineered structural steel becomes chemically unstable. Ships do not fail suddenly in the deep ocean. They fail continuously, incrementally, invisibly, until the moment when accumulated failure becomes visible collapse. Not every consequence of a shipwreck sinking into the deep ocean is one of loss or destruction. Some are surprisingly and even dramatically productive. Artificial reef research has documented cases where certain wrecks increased measurable species diversity in their local area to a degree that genuinely surprised researchers. Fish density around some wreck sites has been recorded at several times the concentration found on surrounding seabed, creating localized hotspots of biological activity in waters that would otherwise support very little visible life. The wreck becomes simultaneously a feeding station, a navigation landmark, and a defensive structure that smaller organisms exploit in every way available to them. But this concentrated productivity may carry consequences that are not immediately obvious. Dense ecosystems alter predator behavior across entire local territories. Nutrient flows shift in ways that affect organisms living far beyond the wreck itself. Some wrecks generate localized zones of oxygen depletion as microbial respiration scales up to match the available material. The ecological footprint of a single large shipwreck can reshape the biological character of its surrounding area for decades. And scientists are still actively working to understand whether that reshaping ultimately benefits or disrupts the broader ecosystem it touches. Older wooden vessels entered the ocean made almost entirely of materials that biological systems had millions of years to learn to process. Modern ships are a fundamentally different problem. They carry synthetic polymers engineered to resist biological degradation. Industrial coatings, formulated specifically to prevent microbial attachment. Complex hydrocarbons bonded into composite materials that have no natural analog in any ocean environment that ever existed before the 20th century. Electrical insulation, fiberglass structures, anti-fouling paint containing compounds toxic to the very organisms that would otherwise begin the recycling process. Yet early research is already finding evidence that microbial communities near modern wreck sites may be adapting to exploit some of these synthetic materials. particularly communities related to organisms found near natural hydrocarbon seeps. Some bacteria appear to be developing metabolic pathways for compounds that did not exist in any ocean before industrialization. This raises a question that sits at the frontier of deep ocean science. Are sunken modern vessels unintentionally creating new ecological niches and applying new evolutionary pressure in one of the least understood environments on the planet? Shipwreck collapse almost never begins where cameras point or where divers explore. It begins deep inside, in structural members hidden behind hull plating and buried under accumulating sediment. Internal support beams weaken before any external sign appears. Sediment gradually fills compartments and redistributes weight across frameworks that were never designed to bear it from the inside. Structural loads shift in ways the original engineers never modeled. And eventually, as internal supports reach critical failure thresholds, entire deck sections begin falling inward in sequences that can accelerate faster than any observer above could predict. Studies of the Titanic's current structural conditions suggest the ship may already be approaching irreversible tipping points in multiple sections, with major portions of the bow and stern potentially facing accelerating collapse as microbial corrosion continues progressing through remaining structural members. When collapse accelerates, the ecological recycling the wreck supports also accelerates dramatically. Surface area exposed to seawater increases. Contact with sediment increases. Biological access to previously sealed interior spaces increases. The wreck stops functioning as architecture. It becomes debris. And debris, in the deep ocean, is the beginning of something new rather than the end of something lost. Given centuries, the physical evidence of most shipwrecks disappears almost completely into the material fabric of the seafloor itself. Iron oxidizes into mineral compounds that blend into surrounding sediment. Organic wood breaks down into carbon deposits that feed microbial communities and eventually become indistinguishable from any other biological material in the sediment column. Aluminum dissolves across decades into ionic traces distributed through the surrounding water. Copper alloys sometimes persist longest of all the common shipbuilding materials, forming stable corrosion shells that retain recognizable shape long after structural integrity is entirely gone. Ceramics and glass may outlast every metal component by centuries, becoming the final artifact evidence that a human object ever existed at that location. Eventually, archaeologists and geologists describe what they call geological assimilation, the point at which a ship is no longer meaningfully an object separate from its environment. At this stage, the boundary between the wreck and the seabed has dissolved. The ship is part of the ocean floor. And this leads to a truth that almost no one stops to consider. The vast majority of all ships that have ever sunk in the history of human seafaring have already reached this stage. They have already vanished completely into Earth's material and biological cycles, not destroyed, reassigned. The ocean is not destroying shipwrecks. It is finishing them. Every vessel that descends into the deep becomes part of a system immeasurably older and more patient than anything human civilization has ever constructed or imagined constructing. Steel returns to mineral cycles that predate complex life on this planet. Carbon re-enters biological systems that have been running continuously for hundreds of millions of years. Engineered structures become nutrient sources. Nutrients become organisms. Organisms become ecosystems that may persist and evolve long after the last human record of the ship that started the process has faded from memory entirely. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is permanent. And perhaps the most quietly humbling truth the deep ocean offers is this. To the organisms and systems that inhabit the abyss, a shipwreck is not a tragedy. It is an opportunity arriving from above, dense with material and structure and chemical energy, welcomed by a system that has been accepting these deliveries since long before human beings existed to send them. Right now, across the abyssal plains of Earth, thousands of unseen wrecks are transforming in total darkness into ecosystems no human eye will ever observe directly. Human technology enters the ocean as history. but it remains there as ecology. If the deep ocean teaches anything at all, it may be that the things we build and lose do not simply disappear. They continue, in forms we never anticipated, in places we will never reach, doing work we never designed them to do.